Yesterday was, if you live in New York or anywhere, it was a pretty crazy news day, but in New York in particular, early in the morning at 8:30 in the morning, as commuters were going on their morning commute, a man entered the subway and carrying weaponry, carrying a smoke bomb, and released the smoke bomb and then began shooting. He was wearing a yellow vest. He had been mumbling in the corner based on some witness reports. And this was seemingly a premeditated attack. These are the images of folks in the subway. There are many reports that as many as 29 people were injured in different ways. I'm not sure if they were all shot. Even though it's been 24 hours, over 24 hours, the information is still very limited on, how many people were really impacted. And luckily, it seems as though nobody has suffered. I think there's like one serious injury, very serious injury, but everybody has survived. This is an event that has shook New York. I woke up this morning. I literally woke up this morning to helicopters next to my window, which face the East River, if you know New York and Queens. And helicopters were circulating. And I'm thinking, what could this be? Because the day before this event, there was a man with a machete in my neighborhood who was shot down by police not too far away. Now, this is in light of a lot of conversations about expanding the budget of the police force here, which receives more money than any other police force and also more money than ever. This is in light of conversations over this public safety in New York City. But I think, for those New Yorkers who know their history, who are steeped in history of New York, I think it's important to note that it's one thing to say the city is not as safe as it used to be. It is still safer than every other city in America. And this is quite important. While there's a spike in crime compared to the last 5 or 6 years, it is still far safer than the last 4, 5, 6 decades, maybe even ever, since we've been measuring crime statistics. With that being said, there are different types of crime. And this is what's really important. There's the illusion of not feeling safe because of events like people being shoved onto the subway or slashings or a machete, a man with a machete. These are not events that are all connected, but in some ways they are. You have folks who've been locked down during COVID, who've lost their jobs. The city is extremely unaffordable. There's a housing crisis. There's a mental health crisis. We know these things. But the way that the mayor and the NYPD respond to this as if they're all gangs on the right wing, of course. There are different forms of crime that might be rooted in some of the same things. The instability, the income inequality of this city, the fact that folks can't keep consistent work, they've been locked up, they're dealing with mental health issues, and we do not provide for that. That can lead from an unhoused person who's having a really tough time, who's feeling isolated and hasn't been able to, receive help, to acting out. Yes. And it's disgusting. It needs to be dealt with. It's disgusting as we look at politicians who are not dealing with these issues that we now have stats on. We now understand the cause effect. But the other side, and this is where we have to learn from history, is, if they want to say gang violence is up, and, there are more shootings, if they want to use that stat, which, yes, there is a spike. What we also learned from the crime surges of the 70s, 80s, and 90s is that there was a supply issue. People were seeking drugs more. And of course, they were pushed on many communities too. We know this very well. But right now, there is research in this area, knowing that some of the drugs that are being dealt on the streets, whatever you want to say, like, this is not my argument. This is an argument being made. It's because there is an increase of consumption because of the circumstances we're under. So the underlying issue here is people are feeling insecure and frazzled and don't have a government that is there to support them. Whether you're resorting to certain drugs or alcohol as people are drinking more now. I mean, these are stats that we all have. People are dealing with their mental health issues in different ways because we do not have a society that takes care of its people. People are dealing with their struggles in different ways. Whether they're unhoused, don't have secure work, whether it's domestic abuse that's up. There are issues that we have to deal with. We have to take care of our people. The result should not be pour more money into a police force. More money into a police force that, despite having more money than most government militaries do in this country, in this world, still couldn't even make sure that all the cameras worked. And, yes, it was an MTA camera, but it was in conjunction with the NYPD. Anybody who has traveled the subway in New York or lives in New York knows very well that there are police officers at many stations, that there are NYPD cameras all over the city monitoring the city. And this is a community, Sunset Park, that is extremely working class, extremely diverse, a lot of immigrants. They don't deserve this. The result is to patrol these communities more? No. This man was unwell. He was unwell. He showed his rants on YouTube. Hundreds of rants against Mayor Adams. He was unwell and he needed help. And that is what this is about. There are people, many people, all around us, probably ourselves, who are dealing with burnout, exhaustion, frustration, worrying about the future, maybe have underlying issues. We all need to take care of each other. That is what it's about. That's what democracy is about, is taking care of each other. Our surveillance state, there's no city in America that has more surveillance than New York City. And yet, we're still in a situation like we were yesterday. And it shows how vulnerable we are. So no, we should not pour more money into the NYPD. They have all the gadgets. They have all the money. They have all the support. Take a sliver of that and make sure that we have a system that supports our people, not just in New York, but all over the country. Make sure that the unhoused have a place to go, a safe place to go. These are conversations that we're strangely just starting to have in the city. But we have the stats on what causes crime to surge. We know. We went through this before. And it's delusional if any law enforcement official wants to lump every single crime in the city together and target Black and brown communities. That's just not the truth. That's just not the truth.